We'll call this meeting of the Senate Election Law and Municipal Affairs Committee to order. And do I have a motion to go into executive session? We have a motion and a second to go into executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. We are in executive session. Okay, first bill I have on the list is House Bill 115.
And-
Are you ready for that one, Senator?
Yes, I do have a question that I would love the input of my fellow committee mates. So for the I know the June primary date, we've kind of been focused on the second week of June. I'm wondering if there's any consideration for the third week in June as opposed to the second week. I know the bill we previously passed was the second week, and I believe the House will be voting on that this week. I did receive a call from someone who's a teacher in a school, and they said if there was a rough winter, perhaps graduation could carry into the second week in June, although unlikely, maybe a little more likely in the northern part of the state. But I'm supportive of the second week or the third week, but I did have the replace all amendment.
I don't. Yeah.
The amendment that I have is dated March 29th, and that was Amendment 1376. Is there one after that that has the June date? Because this one is March. Oh, June and March for the filing period?
This was a replace all the bill that we had. It's
Right.
exact copy. But what I was going to say, instead of it saying the second Tuesday, it would say the third Tuesday. And I'm not sure if there's any. I'm also fine with the second Tuesday. I just thought I'd run that by, and any input would be.
I think the third Tuesday might make more sense if we're trying to avoid conflicting with graduations and other things. I mean, I'm comfortable with either June or August. I know the governor has vetoed August. I know the House would only support August, at least many of the House members I talked to. So if we're going to do June, I think the third week probably makes more sense, but
Mr. Chairman, do you have any comments?
Again, it doesn't really matter to me whether it's the second week or third week in June. I certainly do support August more than June, but August is not a viable option. That right now, no matter whether you're in the second week or the third week, certainly probably more graduations from high school happen on the third week, the second week, then the third week. But when we look at it, you don't use that many high schools, at least in my part of the state. You use more of the elementary schools when you're doing this. So, I mean, if it's the will of the committee, then we certainly could make this a committee amendment and change it from the second week to the third week.
And then on line 14, it would says the first Wednesday in March. Would that be the second Wednesday in March? If we went that direction?
I don't think that one makes a hell of beans, but it's, you're talking about the filing period there, so having an extra week on the filing period. But since this is not an FN, then why don't we just have you do the amendment and we'll bring it back next week? Is that what the committee wants, or does the committee want to do a committee amendment? Okay, so we'll have it redrafted. Okay. Moving on, 202, there's at least one group that wants us to add something, and they're going through the Assessing Standards Board right now to try to get their, at least between meeting, buy into it. So,
I'm still, I had some concerns about this bill, just the way it was drafted and how it would be applied. I went through a lot of different math formulas. I learned a lot in this process, but the line 7-8, the market value of the property shall be equalized at 100% in any tax year for which the municipality conducts a full assessment. It seemed that some of these abatements may have already be in place, and now we're going to retroactively change that. And I didn't know.
what this is saying is that when you do a full abatement of your city or town, okay, that the way they do the abatement, they bring all those values up to 100%, okay? So that what the fair market value is what is supposed to be in the assessment. What this bill is trying to get to is that in years other than that, we had the period of high inflation a year and a half ago, and market values went up considerably. Even in the city of Rochester, some people, they went up by half or almost, a doubling of the value. So in those years, what do you want that percentage to be, and should it be applied across the board? So if that helps, that's the way it was described to the Assessing Standards Board. So we're going to put that one on hold anyway for their consideration of another small change in assessing. But if you have additional questions, don't hesitate to ask. All right, next one I have on the list is 447. Yes, ma'am.
I have an amendment to 447 that is intended to address a couple things raised in the hearing, and so I have that with the Secretary of State's office for review.
Certainly, I think I've talked about it in different forms that I do not agree with the state purchasing election equipment other than accessible voting election equipment. That's where we are. This one is an FN, so I need to deal with it either this week or I think I've got until next week, right? But I think that purchasing this election equipment and spending those HAVA funds when I want the HAVA funds to do the education things that they're doing, to keep on changing and updating the accessible voting machines. So I don't support it, and I don't want to not take action on it and think, make you think that there might be a chance when I can't support it, but I'm only one of the 5.
Okay.
Other comments? Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to agree with you. I give a lot of deference and leeway to the Secretary of State, and he was very clear in his opposition to the bill. So I'm prepared to support an ITL motion.
Okay.
I would support an ITL motion as well.
All right. So Senator Murphy moves ITL, and Senator Abbott seconds.
Second.
Do I have any further discussion?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, understood that, and I think we've talked about this as a committee rather extensively, but the problem remains that, we do need to make sure our cities and towns have up-to-date equipment. I know that there was a lot of work done on this in the House, and so the amendment that I had is intended to address some of the concerns raised by the Secretary of State however, it would retain the idea that, you know, that these funds would assist cities and towns in having up-to-date equipment. I don't have all the information handy, but just as a reminder, you know, there is new equipment that's going to be approved. We need to make sure that's available in time before some of the equipment that's in the state is obsolete. And so continue to make the effort to support our municipalities and make sure that we have an accurate vote count for all of our elections.
Okay, further discussion. The motion is ITL. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it, and I will take that one out. Next one on the list is 463. I don't think the final amendment that I wrote has come back from OLS yet.
I don't have an amendment.
Yeah, I don't have one.
I added a couple of words to the amendment 1586. If you probably all should have that in your packets. No?
I don't think the clerk does.
All right.
I have an amendment to 476.
463.
All right. Just to give you a heads up, there was an awful lot of emails about this bill and misinterpreting what the existing law is. That the existing law says that you're supposed to present your credentials, your documentation to the supervisor. And there was no change in the original, but I put in some words in there to make it clear. You'll see that when you get the new amendment. And also across all of the platforms, whether you're requesting change through this system, if you're wanting to register, or if you are trying to ask for an absentee ballot, I want to change them all to make sure that the last 4 digits of the Social Security number is not optional, that your name, date of birth, and place of birth are captured in all those systems, again, to help to use that. And then when we get to one of the later bills, I'll talk more about standing up a group on election day that would actually do verification of information on election day. But until we get that amendment, I put that one, and it will have to get done next week. Okay. 1099, I think there is an amendment in for that. So I don't think you've gotten it yet. 1091.
1091, we have a meeting about this week.
Oh, okay.
You said 1099, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I think that's why.
All right, 1098, that's a different one. 1091, that's campaign financing. And
We're working.
we did have the hearing, but we still are doing things. We have an amendment drafted by the Secretary of State, which incorporates some of the stuff. And yes, we do have a meeting between Senator Susie, myself. I can't include others unless I hold a regular hearing, from this team, but we're trying to get there. Okay, 1098, relative to ballots delivered to elder care facilities. I did not write an amendment, but on line 5, after the word shall, I had suggested that day that we add the words to the extent possible, because of input from the Clerks Association.
Mhm.
So, comments on that? Okay, so do I have an ought to pass on the bill? Senator Murphy moves OTP. I will second it. Okay, and the,
So, Mr. Chairman, was the amendment that you were going to propose after the shall on line 5, persons authorized in this section shall, to the extent possible?
yeah. I'm comfortable with other words if one of our sitting attorneys
Well,
wants to
I'm wondering
suggest
if we
something.
just remove the word marking, because as the clerks testified, there's nothing they do with regard to marking a ballot, like to actually checking boxes, unless you're assisting somebody that specifically asks.
The reason I would leave marking in there is that if they are in the presence of someone who is assisting a voter, okay, in marking their ballot, then that needs to be handled properly, so that there would not be a union official doing that. The employer would not be, those kind of things. And that's the way I took it when I read it. If I'm misinterpreting it, but there would be occasions where they would see someone, and I guess in a nursing home, what I would worry about more is someone who, of diminished capacity, would not be really involved in the marking of the ballot. Further comments, Senator?
Well, I don't think the bill has anything to do with capacity or assessing capacity. I think the bill is just to ensure that you hand the ballot, somebody is eligible to vote, they're on the checklist, and you take it back. So I guess, so I didn't think that marking was particularly an issue, but
Well, the capacity issue generally in the training that we provide in the book falls upon the moderator, but in these kind of situations, the clerk is the only one there a lot of times, or the supervisor. So they're the only ones who can, if you have strong feelings, I can take out marking, still put in to the extent practical.
I would prefer that. I think that makes more
Okay.
sense.
What's the, you mind explaining the concern you have with that link? I mean, I know you kind of went over it, but just clarify, you want the marking, with marking taking out?
Because the clerks specifically testified, they don't, they hand someone a ballot, and if someone has a question, they don't actually, most of the time, they don't even observe the person checking off the boxes or coloring in the oval. They're not there to dictate how somebody marks their ballot. They're there to ensure that somebody properly receives a ballot and that the ballot is properly returned, and then it's up to the polling location to count the ballot. Somebody could ask for a ballot and just color in, write a name, and that's not their responsibility to in any way dictate how somebody casts a ballot.
again, I don't know that I think that this bill is especially necessary, but I mean, we've gone through it with the marking. I can let that one go, taking that word out and then adding the other ones. And if that's the will of the committee for a committee amendment doing that,
And Mr. Chairman, to keep the marking language in, what would you hope to accomplish with that?
well, again, the problem that I have, the reason I would keep marking in is that when people are assisting others in marking their ballot, okay, then there are rules about that. It can't be a union official. It can't be a boss, an employer. That there's normally there's affidavits involved, that they're going to do it properly and all of those things. So keeping it in there seemed to me to be the right thing to do if they notice any of these things, but they would have the obligation, whether marking is in there or not, to still do those things because they still are an election official, even if it's a clerk pro tem or whatever. They still would have those obligations through other parts of the statute. So it didn't make a lot of difference to me. I would prefer it in there, but I could live with it not being there. So do I have a motion for a committee amendment?
Frankly, I think we could live without the bill.
Hmm?
I mean, I frankly think we probably could just live without the bill. I don't know that the bill is.
I guess the other question, Mr. Chairman, is if we were to make that change and take out the marking language, would my colleague be willing to support it?
Yeah, I mean, I probably would. I mean, I don't know that the bill is doing a whole lot, but.
I don't think that this bill does a whole lot of anything, okay? And certainly, I would be willing to withdraw my second if you wanted to make a motion of ITL.
Just want to, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah.
This bill was requested by the Secretary of State's office, and they testified that they've had complaints in the past.
Aaron? You've been invoked, Aaron.
Before we ITL the bill, I'd like to just make sure we're doing the right thing together. The office.
Comments?
Good morning. Erin Hennessy, Deputy Secretary of State. Sorry, Mr. Chair, I don't have a copy of the bill in front of me. Thank you. Sir, what is the question?
Do you or do you not, representing the Secretary of State's office, want this bill passed?
Thank you for the question. Yes, the Secretary of State is in favor of this legislation. As I believe I previously stated in my testimony, that our office has had complaints, mostly dealing with the overseeing of the delivery and marking of ballots. And we've had complaints from family members who have concerns that there may have been some undue influence over their family members in this process.
Senator Murphy?
Thank you. In those complaints, who is doing the coercing?
I can't speak to the specific incidences, but I believe in general, the complaints were that some members at some of the care facilities have been those individuals,
the
whether
employees?
intentionally or unintentionally.
The employees of the
I
facilities?
believe so. And I believe the secretary or the sponsor can give more details on that.
Thank you.
I will move committee amendment, line 5, after the word shall, to add the words to the extent possible. Do I have a second? Further discussion?
Are you proposing leaving in the word markings?
Yes. Yep. Further discussion? Okay, this is the committee amendment we're voting on. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. And now we're voting on the bill as amended. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
And 3-2, and I will take that one out. All right. 11:05. Comments? Do I have a motion? I will move on to pass.
Second.
Further discussion? Motion is ought to pass. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Was that a nay? 3-2. Senator Abbas, do you want to take this one out?
Yes.
Um, 11:25. The only comment I had on this was that looking just at the bill, I thought it needed to talk that it would only be public comment at public meetings. But the section that they cite, 91A:2, talks about meetings open to the public. So if the public isn't there in a non-public meeting, it'd be hard for them to comment. So,
Although well intended.
you know, I, like the public commenting. And because it's, when they talk about 91A:2, that being the public section, then I have no objections to the bill as it's written. Do I have a motion?
Second.
We have ought to pass. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it.
Move consent.
We have a motion for consent and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed nay. And Senator Susie, you made the motion. You get the bill. Um, 11:26. The note I had on there was that there was discussion of adding envelope on line 9.
Yeah.
And so that it would say absentee ballot envelope, because you don't know that the ballot is in there.
Go ahead, material.
It should all be in the envelope, I guess. So further discussion on that? Do I have a motion on the underlying bill? Ought to pass from sender. Okay,
Second.
sender. Okay, and I have a motion on a committee amendment to add the word ballot on line 9 at near the end. Absentee ballot envelope was returned.
Yeah.
Envelope, yeah. Okay. Further discussion on the committee amendment? Okay, on the amendment, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. And now the bill as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it.
Move consent.
I have a motion for consent. I'll second it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And,
I'll take one out, Chair.
okay. Senator Perkins Cuoco. We will, there are a few more bills that we may be able to do something with. We'll probably be losing one of our committee members, but we'll see if there's anything we can come to agreement on later. And so with that, I'll take a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second to come out of executive session. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. We're out of executive session and we'll start the public
And
hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a personal obligation to attend.
Yes,
I
sir.
will be back around maybe 11:30. If we're still meeting, I can reappear.
Okay,
I have to leave at
we'll
11.
keep
so-
that in mind.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do I have any other time issues that I have to deal with from the other three of you? Any other time issues?
I have an 11 o'clock. for that.
You have an 11 o'clock? Do you figure you'd be back by 11:30?
Maybe shortly thereafter.
Okay, so maybe the best thing to do is to, when we get to the end of our business, if we still have the stuff that we can do, is to recess and then come back at 11:30.
For a few minutes. Okay.
Okay. All
Thank you, Mr.
right.
Chairman.
Yeah. Are you ready? Okay. We're on House Bill 1264 relative to the definition of accessible voting. And who is here? Okay, come on up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Mark Page. I represent Exeter in the New Hampshire House. I'll be brief. This 1264 as amended is a bipartisan bill that addresses a problem with respect to municipal elections. Currently, right at the moment, assistive technology devices are provided for state and federal elections for those who have print and visual disabilities. We do not. We are one of two states, unfortunately, who do not provide them for municipal elections. This bill would rectify that problem. And I don't, I'm going to let Representative Wary in a moment talk about the amendment. I'm urging this committee to vote to recommend the amended version of 1264. And I have a number of folks are here to testify about what the experience is like right now. I think we can all agree that the sanctity of the ballot box is quite important. And the secret ballot right now, as you'll hear testimony about, people in municipal elections, other than 2 towns, actually cities, one city, Concord and Exeter, now do provide municipal elections, assistive devices for municipal elections, and that came about under the threat of litigation. So this bill would reduce that risk also under the ADA, which is problematic right now, and also simply the constitutional right to have a secret ballot, which I take for granted. And that's what this bill would do. It would create a pilot program for the first year or so, but I'm going to let Representative Wary discuss that and the merits of the bill, and other folks can testify about what their experience is like without a secret ballot. And so that's what this bill would address. Happy to elaborate further if you have questions.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, Representative Ware.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and honorable committee members. For the record, my name is Robert Wary. I have the privilege of representing Hillsborough County's 13th district, the great town of Hudson. On a quick personal note, for 10 years, my wife was a rehabilitation teacher at the Perkins School for the Blind in Watertown, Massachusetts. And the concerns that HB 1264 as amended addresses, that concern is near and dear to my heart. Accessible voting systems are currently in place only for state elections with a federal office on the ballot and are generally not made available at polling locations for local elections. As a result, with very few exceptions, individuals with disabilities are not universally afforded equal opportunities to vote privately and independently as individuals without disabilities in local elections. This lack of provision is, in fact, a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act and its implementing regulations. And some New Hampshire communities have been rightly sued for their failure to suitably provide accessible voting systems during elections. This bipartisan bill, as originally introduced, sought funding for machines that would be purchased by the Secretary of State's office. Machines would then be loaned to the communities as needed. However, the Secretary of State's office expressed concerns with both the implementation and the financial outlay in the bill as originally proposed. When the bill came before the House Election Law Committee, the committee unanimously recognized its merits, and I was tasked with developing an amendment to mitigate the concerns. After several discussions with the Secretary of State's office, consultation with others on the financial aspects, discussions with both the Disability Rights Center of New Hampshire and the New Hampshire Municipal Association, Amendment 2024-1041H was developed to provide a short-term solution to meet the immediate need. This amended bill is what is before you now. The amendment allows the accessible voting systems to be made available through a pilot agreement with the Secretary of State for the use of accessible voting systems in local elections. Cities, towns, and school districts will bear the cost of programming and transferring the accessible voting systems under guidance provided by the Secretary of State, eliminating the need for a larger fiscal note as required under the original bill. This amendment provides for a pilot program period in 2025. It will sunset after that so that the Secretary of State's office loans accessible voting systems to the municipalities for use in the local elections. The pilot program will also give stakeholders an opportunity to see what challenges may exist and, if possible, to identify potential solutions to address said challenges, either legislatively or administratively. The amended bill ensures that each polling place has at least one accessible voting system. The bill passed the House by unanimous voice vote on March 21st. Likely a follow-up bill will be put forward next year by the bill's original sponsor, my colleague from Exeter, and others to address the financial aspects needed for the long-term solution, whereby the Secretary of State would purchase additional devices so that the municipalities may then purchase from the Secretary their own accessible voting systems for local elections. On behalf of the many stakeholders behind this effort and behind me, I kindly ask for this esteemed committee's support of this bill. Thank you for your time, and I'd be glad to try and answer any questions you may have.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would you go check and see if Ross Berry is outside the room? Hmm? Yeah. I'm gonna take care of it. No, okay, so, Representative Ross Berry isn't there. Deputy Secretary of State, I want to bring you up. Is there anybody that's going to feel slighted if I, ask for a motion ought to pass after this and don't take all the testimony? Okay, so we may do that then. Okay, Deputy Secretary.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members. Good to see you again. Erin Hennessy, Deputy Secretary of State. Our office is in favor of the legislation. We do believe that everyone should be able to mark and cast their ballot at all of our elections here in New Hampshire. The reason for the amended version that came out of the House with the pilot program is that it is a very time-consuming process for our office to get back and to track down those devices that are not returned timely to our office, to scrub the equipment clean to ensure there was nothing added to those machines at during the elections. To program them for the upcoming election, and then to test every single device to ensure that it's properly programmed for the ballot for the 308 different polling locations that we have here in New Hampshire. So the 2025 spring elections are a perfect time for us to lend those out because it allows enough time for us to go about the scrubbing process, and we will not need them at that time unless there is a special election for any statewide elections. Our federal delegation, Senator Shaheen, was kind enough to provide us with guidance about the use of HAVA funds for equipment such as this that is strictly related to local elections. And unfortunately, the HAVA funds are not a permissible use. They are, however, if they are shared purposes, such as our electronic ballot counting devices that are used in both state and local elections. I am happy to take questions if you have any.
Questions from the senators? No? Okay, thank you. Again, is there anybody that's going to feel slighted if I go into executive session now? Oh, Representative Berry, I was just about ready to go into executive session, hopefully to pass this bill. Did you want to speak? Do I have a motion? Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second to go into executive session. Do I have a motion?
Move all to pass.
We have a motion of ought to pass and a second. I will second it.
I did hear Senator Perkins spoke also second.
Okay, then
Go arm wrestle for it later.
Perkins Bogle will take her second. All right, further discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and 3-0. And Senator Murphy, you can take that one out. Okay, do I have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? And again, if anybody feels slighted, I'll let you talk. No? Okay. Moving on to the next one. 1310. Yeah. Murphy.
I get to do something.
He was the only one of us that hadn't received the bill yet.
My nickname is second.
Okay, as soon as you're ready.
didn't know that was an option, but stroke of genius.
If you get agreement, you can do a lot. No, there was no one in opposition,
Testimony.
and we already took several in support. Okay, and we've got House Bill 1310. So I will check you off as having been here, and Representative Leon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm sorry that it took me a moment to enter the committee room. So this bill comes about as a process about updating the checklist more on an ongoing basis as opposed to the deluge of the 10-year process. In 2021, we passed House Bill 285, which had it so that there were a number of different ways that voters who may have moved, died, or otherwise are no longer eligible voters would be identified, and that information given to supervisors of the checklist. The Secretary of State at least annually runs all of the names against the National Change of Address list and provides that information to supervisors of the checklist. In towns like Derry, where they are on top of this, we've had over 1,000 people removed through this process because Derry does have a lot of apartments and there are a lot of people that move in and out. So our rate may be different than other towns. We do have close to 20,000 people on our checklist. So that's significant, about 5% of our voters. The reason for this bill is that there are some towns and cities who are not meeting to process this information that has been provided to them. That's a problem, especially because we want to make sure that our voter checklists are updated and complete. This will become an issue for those towns and cities that are not doing this when it comes to their next 10-year cycle, one that I expect won't happen and won't be a problem in towns that are keeping up to date on this. Further, there is an actual cost to having an overly large checklist. There has been some discussion about the cost of mailing out the 30-day letters. However, based on the number of people on the checklist, you have certain size requirements, voting booth requirements, and other things that do present a cost to the town. So while there may be some additional mailing costs by having to do this job of maintaining the checklist, I would say that that is offset by both the lower requirements for physical needs at the voting locations and also just the confidence that we have a clean and complete checklist. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from committee members? Go ahead.
Thank you. Just one question. The last sentence, the reconvening of any session which has been adjourned shall not require the publication of notice. Do you think that's a critical sentence?
That's one where if you had a reason to remove that, it'd be fine. The reason for having that in there is so that if they have this meeting and then they need to come back, that they can do that. The whole pushback we've had is that this is complicated and it makes them have to come back for more sessions. Quite frankly, anybody who needs to have this law to tell them to meet 4 times a year probably won't be reconvening for the next. They'll probably push the business to the next 90 days. So striking that last sentence would not be a problem for me.
Thank you.
As best I know, what you're talking about is recessing a meeting to a time certain, which would be allowed by Robert's rules anyway, and most of these meetings would probably be governed by that. So I don't see a problem taking it out either. Senator Perkins Quokka, do you have any question on that? Okay. Seeing no other questions, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Representative Berry was to speak, and Representative Wary said he didn't want to speak. So we've gone through the list. I have a motion to go into executive session. We have a motion to go into executive session. We have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed. Do we have a motion on this bill?
I would support all the pass.
OTP. Okay, Murphy, Perkins, Quokka. Do I have a committee amendment?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee amendment strike the last sentence of the bill. The reconvening of any session which has been adjourned shall not require the publication of notice.
So we have a committee amendment which on line 14 strikes that last sentence on 14 and 15. Is that well understood by all the committee members? All right. I will second it.
So, Chairman, I haven't gotten to look at
Yep.
this section, and I can while we're talking, but I guess the thing that gives me pause about this is to meet every 90 days. That seems like a new requirement, but you know more about this than I do, so I would ask that as a question to you, sort of how much that adds to the duty of a supervisor.
In my opinion, very little. Remember that if we do things like the portal and other things, there is going to be things that are going to go to the supervisors from those other means of doing this. The new system, or the old system and the newer system, when it gets implemented, things that come in either via email, phone message or whatever, that need the supervisor's approval
Yeah.
need to happen.
Yeah.
And in the towns, that may not be it may be a bigger problem in the towns than it would be in the cities, because they have the supervisors in the individual wards that would be involved in that. So I didn't see it as a big problem. And as you note, that the Secretary of State's office isn't here to testify. And apparently it is raining to beat the band out there.
It is behind you, Chairman. Yes. Okay. I mean, I do see that the existing requirement is to meet at least 6 to 13 days prior to the election.
Yep.
So,
And that's to update the checklist right before you print it.
right. Okay. I mean, as you say, the folks that would be here to object are not here to object. So I'm comfortable voting on it today. And if we hear something further, I will discuss it with you.
Okay. We're going to be voting on the committee amendment, which strikes the last sentence of the main section of the bill.
Yep.
Well understood. Okay, that's the next one. All those in favor of the committee amendment say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. And now we're voting on the bill as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Does anybody want this one? And
I'll take it too.
Senator Murphy. All right. I already did.
Thank you.
I know how to spell it. All right. Okay. We're still in executive session. I guess I scheduled the next one at 10 after, so I won't worry about that. Okay, do I have a motion to come out of executive session?
Second.
We have a motion and second to come out of executive session. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. We're out of executive session and we will start the next bill soon. Is Representative Wary? I don't see Burnham. Anybody here to present the bill? No. Okay. Then I guess I'll just present it myself. I don't know of any rule that I can't do it. So that we're going to take up House Bill 1370 FN relative to the durable and tamper-proof containers for preserving ballots. And on the list of individuals, Heath Howard? No. Daniel Healy? No. And Ross Berry? Daniel, you get to talk.
Dan Healy, New Hampshire City and Town Clerks Association President. And we oppose this bill on the tamper-proof containers. Our association, we feel that the current system works for us. The cardboard boxes are easy to store. They're easy to dispose of. We just think that this is kind of unnecessary. It complicates the process. We're concerned too with getting enough of these containers. If we run out on election day, then what are we going to use that day if it's requiring the tamper-proof, the plastic storage container? Right now, we have the cardboard boxes. We put the seals on them. We store them for state and federal elections, 22 months. For local elections, 60 days. Tamper-proof containers are going to add more bulk to our storage. I've heard from some communities that they don't have the space if they have to go to these larger containers. And then when they're not in use, the storage of them, disposal of ballots is going to be complicated. Do we reuse the same containers? We just have a lot of questions because we don't feel the process has been adequately explained on how to seal the boxes. There's the full process we have concerns on, and the cost. I believe the Secretary of State's to provide them, but if we run out, if they break, then who's going to be responsible for replenishing the inventory? So we do have a lot of concerns with this bill.
Questions from the senators? Senator Murphy?
Thank you. The current boxes you use, they come from the Secretary of State's office, don't they?
They do, and I want to say over the last few years, the Secretary of State's office has been a lot better with providing enough boxes. There was a time a few years ago where, we would constantly have to call and request more boxes. They do provide a good amount now. Typically, when our ballots are delivered, they are giving us another inventory of these boxes. And I think that is because some towns ran out, or maybe they just never asked for them. So the state's been, over the last few years, they've been providing the boxes, but
Thank you.
for us, yes.
Additional questions? All right, Secretary of State is also providing different color boxes for different purposes. Isn't that correct?
That is correct. So they provide red boxes for the regular ballots, and then blue boxes for the absentee materials. Well, the cardboard box with red lettering or blue lettering on them.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Representative Berry.
Apologize for being late, bouncing back and forth. I just saw our good friend Senator Susi in my committee. I had to sit there for a whole 5 seconds. I had to come back downstairs. I believe the bill's priority being introduced, but I am the I guess I'm formally introducing on behalf of the committee. My name is Representative Ross Bay. I represent Manchester Ward 689. Introducing 1370 relative durable and tamper-proof containers for preserving ballots. I do believe this was a bipartisan vote out of the House. Basically updating how these boxes are stored. I would refute the previous testimony parts of it. There's always an excuse to not do something. We're talking about boxes that are durable, so they're going to last longer. You're going to need less of them. And if you call, there's a video I believe from 2012. Is probably what saw this is there were the tape that was put on the boxes was easily removed in the Secretary of State's archives, and we have heard many complaints about that over the years. And getting to a system that installs a little more confidence in it, this seemed like an easy thing to do. And my favorite thing is it's more sustainable because you're using the boxes over and over and over and over again instead of just buying new boxes every time. So there will be a small increase the first time we get them. They are provided by the Secretary of State, but if you're reusing something, that inevitably is better. So I'm happy to answer any questions that I can to the best of my ability.
Questions from committee members? Senator Murray?
Thank you. Just one question. Secretary of State's office take a position on this bill in the House?
They weren't opposed to it. I know that. I'm trying to remember if they were outright for it. You'd have to ask them, but I remember they were not opposed to it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions. And Representative Weary still not here.
He's upstairs. I kept him in my committee.
Okay, then you can tell him that he missed his opportunity. Okay. All right, so we'll close the public hearing on this bill.
Yeah, move to go into that.
We'll have a motion to go into executive session. We'll have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the ayes have it. We're in executive session. Again, the Secretary of State did not sign in on this one. Certainly, the reusable boxes, depending upon what they are, could use seals such as we've used on other, including the voting machines. The financial note that's along with the bill estimates that the political subdivision would be 10,000, less than 10,000. Doesn't tell me about the state impact other than undeterminable. Comments from either one of you?
Mr. Chairman, given your experience in this arena, do you find that the seals on the current boxes are not sufficient to ensure the reliability and security of the election results?
The process right now is for them to use strapping tape, and certainly what I used to do is there would be strapping tape on both ends of the box, turn it 90 degrees, and then the strapping tape around that way, and then only use the seal tape at least one full revolution of that, because the seal tape is quite expensive also. I can see the advantage of having reusable boxes in some cases. The problems that we experienced in both Wyndham and some of the other recount towns is that the boxes were in terrible shape when they came to the recounts, and some of them were not sealed in the manner that they should. But I don't know that you're going to solve all the sealing problems whether you have reusable boxes or not reusable boxes.
Perhaps we should be mandating a maximum number of elections the boxes are used and go in the opposite direction.
Well, I don't know. I guess what I would like to see probably is maybe, we do a trial basis on, some, and I know that may not be happy, make other people happy, but I think we learn a lot by doing that. Or changing it such that, for right now, that they can use a combination of the cardboard boxes and the reusable boxes. So those are my comments. What do the rest of you think?
I think we should hold this bill until next week. Unless you are intent upon disposing of it today.
No, it is an FN bill, so it will have to get done next week. All right. So with that, do I have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of coming out of executive session, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we're out of executive session. And we will start the next hearing in just a minute. Okay. Representative Grassi, you're the first one on the list. Oh. He was the prime sponsor, so
He's
I
doing
would- I
doing me a
would-
favor because I have to go to Senate
Okay.
Commerce in 7 minutes.
Representative Barrett.
I won't steal his thunder. My name is Representative Rossberry. I'm the representative Manchester Ward 689. I'm the chair of the Special Committee on Childcare. I want to thank Representative Grassi for bringing this bill forward. It's really his championing bill. This bill comes about from our public listening sessions where we heard that certain municipalities have basically zoned out family and group family childcare, which is very important for rural communities. It's one of the main delivery devices for less populated areas. So this, and I believe there is an amendment coming forward, but this basically limits the municipality's ability to zone those out of existence. We did have a research document done about the different zoning requirements, and it varies very much, is all over the place. So it is very possible for a municipality to zone out group and family group settings, and they do it. And this would be a great bill to pass. I believe it passed unanimously on the committee, and I believe it passed on a voice vote on the floor. So I'll let Representative Grassi, who was so kind to let me go first, he can take all the incoming questions, but definitely big ought to pass here. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Representative Chuck Grassi from Rochester, Stratford 8. I'm here to introduce House Bill 1567, relative to zoning provisions concerning family and group family childcare uses. This bill came up through the last summer in meeting with a number of childcare folks at an event one day. We were talking about how most communities have problems getting childcare centers approved because of strict zoning and site review processes. Having been a planner for 25 years, I understand how that works. And I also understand that I wrote a number of these regulations that basically are causing problems for childcare facilities. We treat them as businesses. They're significantly different than an average business. And there's something that's important to communities. I've handed you a couple of documents. One was a study that was done in 2004, but is just as relevant today, talking about the economic impacts of childcare. Another one is an article from the Josiah Bartlett Center talking about the importance of childcare and also some of the wordage in the bill, which I think is important. And the last one is an amendment, which I understand that some of the senators were concerned about, the words "by right." The Josiah Bartlett Center actually says the words "by right" are a very important part of the bill, and I would hate to see that portion leave. When we're taking a look at the problems with childcare in most communities, you will hear from many people after me who work in the field about the lack of the facilities and how childcare spots have basically decreased over the last couple of years, and we have a greater demand for childcare. I was also working with the folks over at the National Guard, and one of the things that they have problems with, that they have families, maybe a single father, a single mother with children, who who need childcare over the week for their weekend duty, and are able to find it because the National Guard can only contract with licensed facilities. And if you do not have a licensed facility who can provide evening childcare, weekend childcare, which most of your group centers, in fact, I don't know of any group centers that actually provide that at this time. So National Guard members are having a really hard time finding this because the Family Services Division at the National Guard can only contract with licensed childcares. This would, what this bill does, and this actually corrects a flaw in the current RSAs. The current RSAs, when it was the intent of the legislature to say that communities couldn't zone out childcare or group and family home childcare, what happened was they put it in the aspirational section. They didn't put it in the implementation section of the RSAs. So working with Ben Frost, I worked on this wording with Ben, who's with New Hampshire Housing and planning guru here in the state of New Hampshire. We figured that out, and he said, you know, it's in the wrong section. So we worked on the bill to make sure that we put it in both sections. We put it in the aspirational section, and we put it in the implementation section of the zoning ordinances. You can say you can't zone out childcare, but then what planning boards do and planners and city attorneys do is they have this little sneaky thing they call site review, which they can rack up the cost and make it virtually impossible for somebody to do that. If you say you have to have a parking space for each employee that you have, and for each client that you may have, it makes it difficult for a childcare center to do that. If you require that materials that are kept outside of a business establishment, which many of them are treated as, they have to pull all their materials in at night. Try to take a swing set down and bring it inside and then put it back out the next morning. There are site review regulations which make it impossible to deal, to get a family or group family, which is the small child cares, approved in your communities. This bill will exempt them from that process. They already have to meet a substantial number of requirements through HHS, and it would require that they meet those standards in order to be licensed and in order to be exempt from this. Now, the wording in here is pretty much standard zoning wording that we've had when you talk about something being allowed by right. In other words, if you have a use by right, what it means is that the community cannot prohibit you from doing that use. And in the RSA, it also says you have to meet these standards. So you only get that right if you meet these standards. The amendment that you have before you takes out the two words by right in two places. The sentences pretty much read the same after that. If you read it, it makes sense. My concern is you're going to have an attorney someplace who's going to say, if the legislature did not intend that you have this by right, then you don't have it. And I think that just would cause litigation and would probably stop a child care center from opening in a community. You'll have people come up here talking to you about this and how cities like Concord do not have a small group family, licensed small group family child care centers in the community. And this is a hardship for National Guard members and for working families in general. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Senator Murphy.
Thank you. Is there any cap on the number of children that would qualify? It says family or group family child care.
Yes, that's up. Family child care is up to 6 children. If a group family child care is up to 12 children, and that would be the max. We're not looking to have child care centers.
Understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess when I first read the bill, I would have replaced by right with by conditional approval.
Well, that would require them to go to the planning board and receive a, or the zoning board and to get a conditional approval, this limits it, and that means an expense. As soon as you start adding expenses on top of them, that's the thing that we're trying to get away from here. I mean, certainly if this was a larger center, I could see that problem, but this is not a business where you're gonna have a lot of business. Most time families come in one at a time, they drop off their kids, they leave, they may have a cup of coffee, but that's about the extent of it. It's a really low impact business, a childcare center is, and it's, if you had a big family. I talked to somebody who says, I was one of 11 kids. We're not asking for anything more than that, but it'd be allowed by right. That there, you could take it out and it, you know, so you get rid of those two words. But if you wanted to add conditional approval, I suppose you could. It would just add another layer of bureaucracy on top of getting these childcare centers allowed. And I think that's what we're trying to get away from. And as you note in the article from the Josiah Bartlett Center, they said this is a good thing. This is something that we should have, and we should probably look at this in other situations as well that are low impact needs in our community.
I just, the reason that I would have changed it to conditional approval is that the planning board may know of such particular things that are going on in that area that may make it unsuitable for, you know, this kind of a business to operate. So
As soon as you bring up conditional approval, Mr. Chairman, you bring up the ability for them to add more complications on top of the process and make it more expensive. I understand your concern, and having served as a planner for 20 years and as a planning board member, I understand, but this is a really low impact. I mean, we're talking about basically families here. Family childcare would be somebody that has a bunch of kids in their house. And I had 7 kids living in my house at one time. They were all family and my sister's kids, between myself and my sister's kids. And that's all we're asking for.
and again, I can understand why it would be an imposition if I put by special exception. But knowing what I know about being on planning board for a number of years, you know, conditional approval can happen very quickly and without a whole lot of expense. But all right, that's the last question I have. Anybody else with questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, let me get down to my list here. Jennifer, I'm guessing it may be Legier.
Am I on? If it's red? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good
When
morning.
the red light is on, you're live.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Leger, and I'm with A Place to Grow out of Brentwood, New Hampshire. I live in Exeter. I franchised A Place to Grow during COVID, and we really specialize in small family childcare to small childcare centers. So we've helped to establish a few centers across the state at this point in family childcare. And zoning is one of our most complicated issues. We recently had one of our craziest experiences was in Plasto, and Jackie's going to speak to it. It took her months to be able to open that center, and many thousands of dollars having to go through zoning and site plan review for her center. But she built an extensive wait list and was able to move to Salem very quickly. And we opened that school in a zoning friendly community in less than 3 weeks as a commercial childcare center at almost no cost. And we're able to serve 3 times more children. So we really have this crazy set of experiences. The Child Care Advisory Council can't be with us today, but Mary Ann Barter did send me an email suggesting some of the calls that they've had regarding family childcare. I'm going to read this directly because it's going to be a little bit easier, and then I'll go into some of our information. This is from Mary Ann Barter. In a recent focus group of family childcare providers, the Child Care Advisory Council asked what was the biggest barrier to opening a family childcare program, and every provider stated that it was zoning. Each provider had a different story, from the process taking months to complete, and horror stories of programs spending many thousands of dollars to reach various regulations that were above licensing standards, having to hire lawyers to help with the paperwork, etc. The worst story was of a provider who had run a family group childcare with a license for 17 children successfully for almost a decade when the town decided to not allow home businesses to have employees, which would have meant 11 children would lose their childcare because the most she could care for by herself was 6 children. She spent thousands in legal fees to save her business, but ultimately she was grandfathered in, and any new family programs will need to abide by the new zoning restrictions regardless of the needs of parents. So by outzoning us, we're reducing childcare capacity. In the handouts that I gave you, there's some really important information in here that I kind of want to go through. So in the zoning heavy communities on page 1, we really look at these regions with gaps, and you can see towns like Concord, Hampton, Berlin, and Keene have increased their zoning regulations to the point where it's really not possible to have family childcare. Senator, there's actually a few towns in your communities that you serve that are also in the same boat with no family childcare providers. There's 626 spaces that are needed in Concord and not one family childcare provider that can open because they've been outregulated. The economic impact to the state is actually over $500 million because we don't have access to adequate childcare. This is a really simple solution, low impact. They're not big businesses. We're talking about a couple cars extra in and out of a neighborhood. You know, we're so concerned about traffic flow and traffic impact. You know, we're doing big developments. They can pay for those studies. We're talking about a couple extra cars. This is nominal impact in planning boards. They're like, okay, there's a couple of cars coming in. Who cares? They're pretty nominal. On page 2, what I really tried to look at was common zoning requirements that we're looking at in planning boards for like number of employees, hours of operation, parking considerations, so that you can see a lot of the things that planning boards are already requesting are already happening inside of childcare licensing rules. And Melissa's here. She can speak to those if you have questions. What's really great about family care is that they can do evenings, weekends, alternative operational hours, because we need to serve our firefighters, you know, our National Guardsmen, military, who work those crazy shifts, because, you know, us larger childcare centers, we're not. We can't do those things. Parking spaces are nominal. You know, if you have 12 children, you maybe need 3 employees, usually 2. One is going to be the owner, 1 employee, maybe another assistant. But any 3-bedroom residence is already going to have capacity for 3 parking spaces. Septic usage is the other thing that's really talked about in a planning board. Childcare only requires 10 gallons per day per child. So even at 12 children at a maximum capacity, that's 120 gallons per day. A 3-bedroom residence is already built to a design standard of 300 gallons per day. So it's really a moot point to go to site plan review for something as simple as this. And then we look at square footage of residential usage. A lot of towns limit square footage of houses that can be used to 1/3. If you had a 1,500 square foot home, 12 children are going to require 480 square feet, which is already within that 1/3 of the square footage of a home. So we're adding layers of complication that are already unnecessary because they're built into the licensing laws as it is. The licensing rules follow building code, they have fire code restrictions in there, and they've already factored in most of these pieces. So the last page is some quotes from some of the providers that we worked with, and the difficulty in this process. One says, like, this is difficult to go through. It's as if they're trying to sway you away from being a childcare owner. I mean, it's definitely not a preferred business model. We don't make a lot of money. This isn't, you know, a high profit business, but it's an essential service. And some of us have dedicated passion. Like, this is what we do for a living. This is my life, and I love what I do every day. And families need this. It's part of neighborhoods. We're asking to build communities. Childcare, family childcare is the best basis for building a neighborhood community. Talk to any real estate agent in New Hampshire. The best thing you could have is a neighborhood that's walkable from your home. I mean, a family childcare provider that's walkable from your home. I live in this really close community in Exeter, and almost everyone chose to live there because they could walk next door to Great Bay Kids. They're within walking distance of Main Street School. It's really important to communities to have this sense of neighborhood when you're raising your family. So it's a very attractive possibility. I mean, the other factor we talk about is family choice. By outzoning family childcare in the way that we have, we're really eliminating family choice for childcare. A lot of children with challenging behaviors, they might need closer, knit groups, smaller centers where they can have more one-on-one supervision, and they're going to be much more successful in these models. But right now, they're not available, and they're going away at an alarming rate. On the last page of the handout, you can actually see that since 2018, there's 24% reduction in family child care providers, which is a net loss of 371 spaces since 2018. We need these spaces in childcare more than we ever did before. So we have to figure out a way to make this more feasible and accessible for families.
Questions from senators? Seeing none, thank you very much. Jackie Caldwell?
How do you do? I'm Jackie Cowell from Early Learning, New Hampshire. And nice to see you, Chairman Gray and Vice Chairman Murphy and Senator Quokka, Perkins Quokka. And so I'll be very brief. A lot of you that you've heard, we're a statewide organization that supports childcare on behalf of the families, the hardworking families who need it. This is a bill that will help expand childcare options. Hardworking families are really, the wait lists are huge. Anything we can do to make it easier for small businesses to operate, especially these home family childcares where that might be one of the easiest things to get started except for zoning. And so centers, there's a story here I'm going to share with you. Jen alluded to it with Destiny Carter from Plasto. She started in June of 2022 to start a family childcare in Plasto. It took her 6 months. She couldn't work. The whole thing took up all of her time. She finally opened it. So many barriers, spent thousands of dollars. There's story after story about spending so much more extra money and having to go above and beyond licensing, that really the licensing takes good care of making sure that these are great programs for children and the families. And so we do want this bill to pass. What Destiny did is she, because as Jen said, she had a wait list so long, she said, all right, I'm going to open a center in Salem. She was able to do that, and like she said, within weeks rather than 6 months. So we really would like to level the playing field for these small businesses to be able to operate. And as it's just every childcare, family childcare program. There's even one operating in Manchester, Lisa's Family Childcare. She's been operating for 20 years. Every 3 years, she has to sign a variance and pay $250, and nothing has changed. So anything we can do to help, thank you.
Questions? Senator Perkins Quokka.
Thank you, Chair. So, thank you for being here, Jackie. So the argument is basically that allowing this use not under a conditional use permit and not under special exception, allowing this use, is really sort of a minimal disruption from a zoning perspective, but B, many of the powers that we would normally use zoning for are addressed through state regulation. And so,
Yeah.
And
And
maybe
fire and safety, there's, others get involved, yeah.
right. And so, we have kind of a chart here on page 2 that talks about the zoning limitations and the state requirements. Could you speak a little bit to just sort of like how big is the average family child care and what is the setup that we're just talking about, just to be clear?
I wouldn't, I think Melissa Clement from DHHS might have a better handle on what is average.
Yeah.
But again, as was mentioned, you can have up to, you can have up to 3 children that you are not related to and be licensed, legally operating, license exempt. You can have up to 6 and just be one person and be licensed. Then there is that family group that was mentioned before, up to 12 with employees, etc. For family group childcare, you can have and she knows. But I think the majority, I hope I'm right here, I think the majority of them are very small businesses, owner-operated small businesses, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Additional questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. All right, that's everyone who has signed up. Come on forward. Okay.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Merritt. I'm the president and CEO at New Futures. I'm pinch hitting this morning for my colleague Rebecca, who's at the Wellness and Primary Prevention Council meeting that happened to conflict with this meeting. New Futures is the Kids Count organization for the state of New Hampshire, and in that role, we collect data and information on the health and well-being of New Hampshire's kids. And one of the things that we also collect is some data around the childcare situation in New Hampshire. So currently, right now, there are about 54,000 kids under the age of 6 that live in the state of New Hampshire, but we only have about 33,000 available slots. So that means that we have 21,000 kids that are and families who are currently not able to access childcare if that's something that they wish to seek. 46% of these kids also live in what would be classified as a childcare desert, meaning that there are little to no options for childcare in their home community, and they're having to travel extensive distances in order to find that. A key strategy, obviously, as you've heard already this morning, to address this is the supporting the creation of new childcare options. And childcare centers in New Hampshire alone can't be looked to fill this void. We need a multi-pronged strategy, and allowing for the establishment of more family and small group childcare centers is a key component of that. You've also heard that currently there are some issues with local zoning. We personally believe that HB 1567 establishes the state level position for favorable zoning conditions for providers, and it's a vital step forward to signaling to communities that it's not just the state that needs to come to the table with some solutions, that they also have a role in addressing the childcare crisis in New Hampshire. Again, it's not a silver bullet, it's part of a larger strategy, but we do believe that it would send a strong signal to communities and help to improve the climate as it relates to family and small group childcare here in New Hampshire and the availability of choice for families, which they're currently lacking. So for that reason, New Futures does strongly support this piece of legislation and does urge the committee to vote it out to pass. I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions? You didn't speak to the issue of by right, by conditional use, by special exception.
Okay. Would you like me to follow up with that?
Well, again, I just didn't, since that was one of the issues that prompted the amendment that Representative Grassi brought forward. And one of my objections is putting things in, by right. I didn't know if you had a comment on it, so I want to make sure you had the opportunity.
Thank you. We would defer to those that have spoken before us on that particular issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Ma'am?
I'm Melissa Clement, Chief of Childcare Licensing, and I'd like to address something that you had mentioned as a concern.
Your name was?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Melissa Clement. I'm the Chief of the Childcare Licensing Unit for the Department of Health and Human Services. And as you were asking questions of the people who were up here previously testifying, one thing I want to make sure everyone understands is even if zoning isn't involved in needing to provide approval for family child care providers, there are still local people who need to provide a report to Health and Human Services in order to get their license. So once they go through, before they go through the licensing process and before they're approved by our agency, they have to have a local fire inspector come and inspect their home, and they also have to have a local health officer. So one of the concerns I heard you say was that others who are in the community may know about the residential area and may be able to speak to that. So there are others in the community who would be able to speak to that, even if zoning was not part of the equation and giving their approval.
Questions from the senators? Senator Perkins Polk?
Yeah, thank you, Melissa, for being here. I wondered if you could speak to, or whether you have a sense of the sort of question of average size. And I'm asking the question because as it relates to by right versus conditional use or special exception, one of the concerns I'm sure would be traffic. And so what is the average, number of kids under care that would sort of lead to drop-offs and pickups in the neighborhood?
So for a licensed family childcare home, there have between 4 to 6 children before they enter school, and they can also have 3 children that come before and after school. So their maximum capacity is 9. So it's very small. There you would have maybe 2 or 3 families dropping off in the morning and then picking up in the afternoon. For family group childcare, they have up to 12 children who are there before and after school. I mean, excuse me, 12 children before they are school age who may be enrolled. So that would have a provider with an additional helper, and then they would be coming morning and night, and they may have 5 children before and after school.
Follow up if I may.
Absolutely.
Okay, so just to make an important point there too, which I think others have made, but there's only one employee in sort of the larger scenario.
Yes.
Required by the ratios.
Correct.
Okay, and then final question, if I may, Chair. So when we think of, I think the other thing that was sort of raised, but may give pause to folks, is this idea that hours of operation, which could sort of normally be regulated by zoning, but is regulated by the state. I mean, how do I ask this as a question? So could you speak to the hours of operation provisions in the state rules? Because I know zoning, even if this use was allowed by right or not, may have separate provisions that deal with times of operation or decibel levels or noise that apply regardless.
So in our statutes, in addition to the types of family and family group childcare, there's also what's called a night care agency. So they would need to get approval to operate a night care agency if they're operating after, it says evening hours, and I believe in our rule right now it's after 8 p.m.
Okay.
We've recently changed that. So that would be a separate requirement and separate approval.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Okay, additional questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, and with that, we'll close the public hearing, and we've got one more to go. Who's here to introduce the bill? Come on forward. You ready?
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Senators. I'm here for the record, my name is Representative Davis. I'm from Milan, Coas District 2. I'm here to introduce House Bill 1345. This bill, it's for Coas County only. It simply changes the terms from 2 years to 4 years for the sheriff, the registry of deeds, registry of probate, the treasurer, and the county attorney. Rockingham County has already done this. They've passed this with some success. We have the bipartisan support of all 9 delegation members, all 3 commissioners, and the New Hampshire Association of Counties as well. We feel that these are paying positions and not voluntary positions, and we're asking people to leave good paying jobs for a 2-year term. We'd like to make it a little more attractive by turning it to 4-year terms. This way, every other year, they're not campaigning. They can concentrate more on their jobs. And this passed through the House on a voice vote. I know there's a couple of people speaking behind me, so I'll leave anything open for them, but if you'd like me to answer any questions, I'd be happy to try.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Representative Terry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Jim Tierney, and I am representative for COAS 1, which is Dalton, Lancaster, Northumberland, and Stratford. What Representative Davis said all of that is accurate and true. One additional thing, the positions these folks hold, there is a learning curve, and that learning curve takes time, in some cases a year, which means as soon as they learn the job, they're campaigning to see if they can keep the job. If they don't keep it, then we've got another learning curve to begin. 4 years lets them come up with ideas. It lets them implement those ideas, which hopefully are good ones, for making the office function better. If it's an office that gets receipts, maybe they increase the receipts. But that is one other reason why this needs to go to 4 years. And I will take any questions that anyone's got.
Questions from senators? Seeing none, thank you very much. The Honorable Rideout.
Good morning, members of the committee. I am Leon Rideout. I am currently the Coos County Register of Deeds, and to be right up front, I am affected by this bill, and I support this bill. I was approached at a point in had my own business. I was approached about becoming the Register of Deeds. Someone thought I'd be a good fit for it. I went and looked, learned about the position, and decided to go for it. But one of the huge drawbacks was the fact that it was only a 2-year term. So there's absolutely no job security for somebody to leave one position and take one of these elected positions. Also, as was stated earlier, in the learning process, it took actually probably about 18 months to get the full grasp of the job and what needed to be done. And I was already campaigning for another term, which interfered with the smooth operation of the office. The 2-year terms also keeps the staff kind of in a turmoil, because every 2 years they've got to be worried about having a new boss, new office things. And I think my staff takes every 2-year election worse than I do. I'm out of job, but their job, they're looking for longevity, and the constant changing can be very disruptive to the office. I also think the 2-year term prevents maybe some more qualified candidates from stepping up to take the position, because again, there's no job security if you've got to run every 2 years. If it's every 4 years, I think you might get more people to stand up and run for these positions.
Questions from the senators?
Yep. Any questions or?
Don't see any. Thank you very much.
All right.
Kate?
Good morning, Chairman Gray and members of the committee that are left. My name is Kate Horgan. I'm here on behalf of the New Hampshire Association of Counties. We do support this bill. This would bring Coos County's constitutional officers in line with the 4-year terms that are in Rockingham. As previous members have said, it creates consistency for the offices. These offices are primarily administrative functions. They are not making policy decisions for the county. Therefore, having a 4-year term could benefit the county. The association did support Rockingham when they made their 4-year bid in 2022. So we are here to support COAS as well, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions from the committee members?
Thank you very much.
Seeing none, thank you very much. Anyone else? Seeing no one, we are in recess until 11:30. Okay, it being a little past 11:30, we will call the session back out of recess, and Senator Abbas has gotten hung up at the wake he was at, so he may not be back in time. But that shouldn't preclude us from doing some business here. And I know Senator Perkins Quokka had a bill at 11, so she may be, but 1567, okay. I will take a motion to go into executive session. And all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. We're in executive session. 13:45. Seemed like we had pretty good agreement on that. Do I have a motion? No problem. This is the length of the terms of office in Coas County to agree with what we've already done in Rockingham County.
I'll move all to pass.
Senator Murphy moves ought to pass.
It's a matter of time, Joe.
Senator Susie seconds the motion. Any amendments or discussion? You want to make sure you had the opportunity. Okay, seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and I'll take that one out. And back to the other list. 1150, I had a question mark on that relative to advertising rates for political advertisements. I guess I don't know. I mean, if somebody goes in and makes a contract for some advertising, you know, does that lock them into that same rate for somebody who comes in the day of, a day before the election? 1150. I mean, it's I'm just not sure that it does what you really want it to do. Like I say, if I go in and I contract with a radio station for some advertisement, okay, is the next person who goes in the day of the election and they're trying to squeeze them in, are they subject to the same rate I paid, or, you know, and again, I don't think that question is answered. You know, on the surface, this sounds like a real nice thing, but so.
I think my reading is it just does away with the requirement that these rates be filed with Secretary of State's office.
No person, business, organization published.
And the
So the rate doesn't change, it's filing and then also labeling them as political advertising.
Are you guys in favor, or?
I'm in favor of removing the requirement that these rates be filed with the Secretary of State's office. That seems to me to be a bit of a archaic anachronism. But if we want to retain the requirement that it be marked political advertising, we could just leave the first sentence of the deleted language in place.
All right.
I would
doesn't-
support that. So reinstate the first sentence and then,
Okay, so for committee amendment, you want to amend lines what through what?
Lines 2 through 4, we would be unstriking identification of political advertising.
And so
and I would second that.
end with political advertisement back on line 4, and then from rates on through the rest of the paragraph you would take out.
Keep it out.
All right. Senator Murphy moves, Senator Susie seconds. We need a motion
Move
on
out
the
to
bill,
pass.
so it's ought to
I'll
pass.
second.
Senator Murphy and Senator Susie. And then on the committee amendment, Senator Murphy, Senator Susie. Okay. So we'll move, the question is on the committee amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. On the bill as amended, further discussion, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Senator Murphy, you get that one.
I get to do something.
Again. Again, we're trying to keep you busy. Okay, next one that's on the list is 1181. Solid waste districts. It is interesting to note that the amendment that did pass in the House passed 223 to 136, but is not the amendment that came out of the committee, which failed 149 to 216. Tell me, guys, what do you see in this that I don't? But
I would be fine with moving on to pass.
Senator Susie moves on to pass.
This was not a bill that aroused strong passions.
Had
I think the issue, DRA said that this had come, it was to eliminate confusion because the language is similar to other provisions in the statute.
yeah. And
DRA was not in support, but they virtually never actually support, right?
They're always neutral. As to the policy, but they did provide a good explanation as to why it makes sense to have it.
all right, I will second your motion, Senator Susie. Any further discussion or amendment? Seeing none, we're voting on ought to pass. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Senator Susie.
Sure.
All right. 12:15. I do want a public hearing on the amendment. The amendment, goes into the Housing Appeals Board on 679. And although we're talking about housing and stuff, it really doesn't have to do with the Housing Appeals Board. So having the public hearing is just kind of belt and suspenders, and we'll do it next week. And next one I have on the list is 1313. Did we get an amendment?
There was the suggested amendment from Representative Howard.
The only thing that I had marked up in this is that on line 10 and 11, the words 2 free requests may be made per election.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to take out, and then after a fee of up to $25, and I was going to put in plus the cost of the media. So, because I don't want somebody coming in and handing the people a
Their
thumb
own
drive
flash drive, yeah.
and saying, okay, put this in your machine and infecting the machine. So those were the things that I had a problem with.
If it's being sent by email, then there is no media.
Correct. So there would be no, the $25, you know. And the fee is up to $25, so.
It's going to be $25.
If it's a simple request, I'm sure that there will be some of the clerks that don't. The House version of
But
this,
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what Senator Murphy is saying is there isn't an option for a flash drive. It's just the email and the language.
for such an electronic copy,
Or the city meeting.
Line 9.
Oh, okay.
Electronic copy to be sent via email. So if we're going to allow other electronic formats, then we just have to strike that part. Or we say, no, it's going to be via email.
but we all know that there are limits.
Right, so should it say after on line
it
10
says-
via email?
But it says,
Or,
well, it says option shall include,
right,
and so we say the email. And since it does say shall include, we can say
email or
removable drive.
medium provided by the clerk, or other medium, electronic medium provided by the clerk.
Okay, I like the other. Okay, so option shall include electronic copy to be sent via email or other electronic media
Provided by the clerk. So that it's clear that somebody can't just bring one in.
I think what we ought to do on this one is write the amendment.
Okay.
Because it's starting to get,
A little messy.
yeah.
Okay. It's not an FN, so it's not,
It is.
It is an FM.
it is an FN.
You want to do away with the free copy?
No, 1313 doesn't have an event. On the, oh, it doesn't on the sheet, no. No, I was looking at my. You fooled me, Tricia.
1359. Oh, and that last one, do either of you want to be the one that writes the amendment?
I can, no mind.
Okay. I'll accept. Okay, 1359, relative to appeals of certain zoning decisions by abutters. Comments, questions on this one?
I would move all to pass on this.
I'll second, there wasn't any opposition, so.
Any discussion, amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it.
I'll take it out, Mr. Chairman.
And Senator Murphy gets that one. $13.69. This one here, if we were going to do it, I would like to see lines 4 and 5 say 2025 instead of 2027. I guess I don't have any problem with it being done every 4 years, but then down in line 21, I would like the look back to be 6 years, so that it always did 2 presidential elections. Comments from you guys?
Could we just hold off until the amendment is drafted on this one?
Okay. Well, depends on whether the senator wants to draft it herself or.
I mean, if you want to put his suggestions, yeah, and then we can, just to look at it before we, thank you.
Okay. $13.99. To me, this one's a no. Comments? Questions?
Much like the parts we took out of Senate Bill 538, you know, I am inclined to support the bill for a lot of reasons. I truly believe that misuse of zoning has led to a large part making it very difficult and expensive to build throughout our state. Having said that, I'm very much aware of the political implications. I know the volume of emails that I've been receiving have been against the bill. And so, you know, politics is the art of the possible. I think this bill is not really ready for right now, so I'm prepared to move ITL.
Senator Sissi, you comment?
Would you consider interim study?
I would support interim study.
Okay. Senator Susie moves interim study. And Senator Murphy seconds. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And Senator Susie, you get that one. Still have a couple of minutes here. $15.69. I do want to talk about that one for a minute. We heard a lot of testimony about the hardest thing to prove was the citizenship. I had a request from the Secretary of State's office to consider increasing the requirements for the application, and that's what we talked about in the other bill, is last four digits of social security number and the driver's license, non-voter ID, or a box that says I don't have either, being required, and having an affidavit. The bill that I put into OLS right now has that sunset, that affidavit for that in 2027 in January, because I think that we can get there through the databases. Certainly, I added into what would be section 2 of the bill, Roman 2 of that, that the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, and the Division of Motor Vehicles would all have to have people available to answer questions and verify information when the documentation provided wasn't sufficient. And then there's a few other tweaks in there that I put in. So if you have heartburn with any of those, be prepared to read the thing when you get it, because to the prime sponsor of that bill, when he called me, I said, I don't think that we can withstand the court challenge the way the bill was written. I think substituting the inspection up front, I can withstand the court challenge because I am going back and doing my best to give it to them. There is a Social Security database called HAVV, and I want to find out what the rules on that are. And that's why if I add back in an affidavit for the first, for 2 years, essentially 2.5 years, that would give us time to do that. And then that affidavit could be repealed. So but that's where I am on that. Anybody wants to talk on it, we can. Okay, moving on. 1596.
Mr. Chairman, I did draft an amendment that I did not get back. As you may recall, there was an issue raised about the reference to the federal statute, and I just want to run it by Representative Brennan before I present it.
Okay, we'll do that next week then.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I think that's also the one that Jamie Burnett
Yes,
came in and
same
testified on.
issue.
And so he has been dealing with Senator Perkins Coker on that. 1626 FN. I think that we've got the amendment that we did for agriculture. Is there any other issues out there for anyone on this one?
I don't think so.
Okay. Then I will move on to pass.
Second.
Second. I will also move amendment to 1110H. Oh, that's not the right one.
1411?
1411S.
And I'll second the amendment.
Let me just find it so that. Okay, there it is. All right, further discussion? All right, the motion is on amendment 1411S. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Now, the bill as amended for the discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And I guess I'll take that one out too. Since I made the motion. Anything else? Because I've got to get across the street. Okay. Seeing none, do I have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
And we have a motion, a second to come out of executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. We are out of executive session. Our business today being complete. We are adjourned.